This video is based on true events. The launch takes place at Cape Kennedy in Florida, USA. There are two major launch pads, Launch Pad 39B and 39A. 39B is where rockets like the shuttle were launched, which was retired in 2011. This is Merritt Island, where the launch took place. This was on the right side of Florida. Now that we know the location of where the Saturn V will launch, let's talk a little bit about the actual Saturn V. The S1C stage is the bottom stage. This stage is powered by 5 F1 engines, which is still the strongest engine at the time of this posting in 2024. It has 2 tanks full of fuel and produces so much thrust where the rocket can easily lift itself off the ground. The second stage is called the S11 stage. This is where it has also fuel tanks, obviously. It powers 5 smaller rocket engines due to the weight capacity. The S14B stage is the top stage, and it's the last stage, which also known as the third stage. The third stage only has 1 engine. It's called a J2 rocket engine, and it produces not too much thrust, but thrust where it is still able to lift itself. This is the spacecraft. The service module was capable of carrying fuel tanks for the rocket engine on the bottom of the service module. The command module is where the crew spent most of his time, especially Michael Collins. The boost protective cover was used for the Saturn V. In case if there was an emergency, it was latched on to the command module, and at the very top you'll see launch escape system. This had motors, all tiny itty bitty rocket engines, just to lift itself in case anything bad did happen, like an explosion or a fuel leak. The astronauts could safely get out. This is obviously in a museum, but this is what it would look like if you could see it. Now this is the lunar module. The lunar module would carry Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong down to the lunar surface, which is known as the moon. The moon had a crater which was about a football stadium big. Michael Collins and Neil Armstrong had to guide through this crater and try to not hit it, because if only a rock could flip the spacecraft upside down, sadly that could kill them all. And it actually had 2 stages, an ascent stage and a descent stage. The descent stage was at the bottom. This would start a bomb which would propel the astronauts down to the surface. Then the ascent stage on the top, which is the kind of thing that looks like tinfoil, would launch off, breaking away, which would have another rocket engine on it to blast off the surface and go dock back with the scene module that you guys just looked at. It would attach to this if you didn't want to scroll back all the way. Apollo 11 was launched on July 16, 1969 at 8:32 a.m. Then the S1C stage would separate from the S11 stage. Here's a photo of the S11 stage. Then the S14B stage would launch after the S11. Here's a photo of all the stages. This is the trajectory that the astronauts took to get to the moon. As you can see, they left off at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Then they went at a V shape or a slope shape to get to the desired area around the moon. Once captured by the moon's gravity, they would wrap around it, and when they were around just in translunar injection, they would break away from the fairings that held the lunar module, or the LM, which is the moon lander, inside, and what protected it during launch. the CSM, or command module, would turn around and 90 degrees and pull out the lunar module. This was so they could all be one spacecraft, Columbia and Eagle. The Eagle and Columbia floated around for 3 days until they got to desired point around the moon, which then they detached, which I mean the LM detached, to be specific. The LM detached to let the astronauts descend to the lunar surface. Michael Collins stayed inside of the rocket, all CSM, while Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon. Once the astronauts' time was over, they headed back on the ascent stage and docked back with the CSM. The astronauts ripped through the atmosphere at incredible speeds. The astronauts are home. We beat the Soviets in the space race. We're home. To comfort, to warmth, at last. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, because it makes me happy and it's absolutely free. Thank you for watching. Please check out my other content too.